Northport. So the eye is really not too far south from Sarasota, but the winds are nowhere near 155 miles an hour. That's the example there, that you could be relatively close, less than 100 miles, less than 70 miles away from the eye, and still not be anywhere near hurricane force winds. That area is going to be small. Most of us are going to see tropical storm conditions with the system. And the reason why the bay hasn't been an issue yet, we haven't talked about surge in the bay, is because of the wind. These arrows, as the rain is moving by, they point in the direction that the wind is going. And for the duration of today into tonight, as the eye passes south of the bay, the wind is going to be blowing the water out into the Gulf of Mexico.
Алло, слышно, прием.
The FDOT cameras, the white caps moving west or east to west out into the Gulf.
Что вообще происходит? Что за дурдом,
Yes, as the storm passes north of Tampa, the winds will turn onshore here and start to push some of the bay water towards eastern or southern Hillsborough County. But by then also the winds will be lighter. That's going to happen tomorrow afternoon. So there could be some tides above where they should be. But in terms of a large damaging surge, that's just not looking as likely with the system as it continues north and east, because it is forecast to stay south of the bay and then head up towards central Florida. Again, could be a Category 1 is approaching Orlando. Is Orlando going to get hit as hard as Sarasota? No, not at all. Not even close. It's not just if the winds are half, the damage is half. The damage increases exponentially as you increase the winds, meaning, a Category 1 is only produces about a ninth of the damage that a Category 3 does, and so on. So as you drop in categories here, you really start to reduce a lot of the damage. And a Cat 1 or Cat 2 or tropical storm, you're looking at tree branches, tree damage, a fence down, that kind of deal. You're not going to be looking at damage to structures. That's only going to happen in a small area along the sun coast. See the breadth of the storm. The yellow here represents places that may see wind gusts into tropical storm strength. It's a wide area. It absolutely is, but the area that sees hurricane winds is a small fraction of the actual larger storm. And that's going to stay down towards the sun coast. Is it going to get rough in Sarasota County? Absolutely. There are going to be some rough moments here. Hardy, DeSoto County, yes. It's going to get loud. The wind's going to get strong. It's going to get pretty rough for a while as this is moving by, but it should move by pretty steadily. You're not going to be in the eye wall for hours and hours. With a 20 or 30 mile wide eye, you're talking maybe an hour and a half at most at the worst conditions. Those very strongest winds, you're only in there probably for less than an hour, and then you're out. In some cases 30 minutes as it moves by. It's a very small area. And then you're back to more strong tropical storm force winds that'll continue to blow things around. This is Thursday morning. A lot of us still experiencing those strong tropical storm conditions. As the storm weakens, the hurricane winds go away, and the tropical storm force conditions weaken as well off the East Coast. You've got friends that went to Daytona, Flagler, up towards St. Augustine, Jacksonville. They're going to get some wind. Georgia coast, absolutely. Nothing like what they'll see down towards where the storm is making landfall. Very sporadic tree damage in those locations. Current winds right now, 10, 20, 30 miles an hour across Pinellas County. Southern Pinellas increasing. Nature coast, haven't spoken much about you here, Citrus, Hernando, and Pasco County. That's because you're going to get the bad weather last. You're going to be waiting for this for a while. This storm has really got to get farther north to influence your winds. You'll get there eventually, but not right now. Polk County, watching for that center as it heads towards you. Winds here could be an issue overnight and late this evening. Of course, as we get down towards southern Sarasota County, sustained winds over 50, so we're into tropical storm strength. Gusts could approach hurricane strength. Englewood right now as we go through the next hour or so. Tampa, here are the potential wind gusts. I think this is what the majority of the Tampa Bay Metro will see. Wind gusts in the 60s, maybe occasionally in the 70s. Now, if the eye wall does enter southeastern Hillsborough County, there could be an opportunity or a window of opportunity for some stronger gusts. But for most of us, this is the kind of wind we're going to see, sporadic, throughout the rest of the afternoon. All right, that's the latest here, guys. We'll send it back to you. James and Dia.
Thank you so much. Yeah, back here on the desk, we want to get a check now on Polk County.
That's right. We told you a little while ago that there were about 400 power outages in that area. Our Chad Mills is live in Bartow this morning with an update on the conditions there. Chad, has it started to get worse?
Well, rain is certainly harder from the last time I joined you. When I last joined you, by the way, I was in downtown Bartow. We're now east of the Peace River. We're in a mobile home park known as the Peace River Village. We're in the back corner of it, and behind me, just behind these trees, maybe not even half a football field length away, is the Peace River. and you might not be able to see it from your vantage point, but the Peace River already creeping up into the back corner of this mobile home park. If you look over here, not a whole lot of water to see right here right now, but this wasn't here just a little while ago. This is new since we got here about 30 minutes ago. That shows you that the river already encroaching on these homes. We talked to one of the homeowners here. He tells me all it takes is about 30 minutes of hard rain here on a good day recently, and the water is up to your ankle. That's because they've had so much rain during the month of September. Also, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, according to the mayor of Bartow, started releasing water from Lake Hancock. That's kind of the origin of the Peace River behind me, in preparation for heavy storms to kind of lower the level of the lake there. Well, it's meant that the river level, the Peace River level, has been higher. Hasn't really been too much of a problem until now. Now it is a problem for these neighbors. Many have evacuated, but just driving through this mobile home park, a number of neighbors chose to hunker down. They did not leave. The neighbor we talked to believes that they could see about a foot of water around the homes, especially in this back corner. Now they are elevated, they're off the ground, so he doesn't think that water will enter his home, but he doesn't know. And he says it's a very real possibility that they do take on water in these homes. I talked to him just a few minutes ago. I want to play you part of that exchange.
Are you worried about this one? I know you've weathered storms in the past, but are you worried about this?
My whole life, I've been through countless storms. What I'm worried about is getting back in. I got some fish in there, you know, I got lots of food in the freezer. I'm probably planning on taking some of the food with me. I can't see taking the fish with me. That's a bit of an undertaking. You know, with the tank,
Thank you,
it's a big tank. So that's about the only power we're going to have going is for the fish tank and the freezers.
Now he tells me he has seen enough. He is actually packing up this car behind me. You see it's a Chevy sedan, pretty low to the ground. He says he's getting out of here, actually plans to evacuate to some family members' home in Haines City area where there is higher ground, but he knows others will stay here. He hopes his neighbors will make the wise choice, the safe choice, if the river level does start to rise, which county officials, city officials do believe it will start doing here. If not today, then the next day, or potentially the next day. They know the water has to go somewhere. A lot of it will fall in Lakeland. That's what's projected, and it's projected for the river behind me, the Peace River, to rise as a result of all of that rain. Now he tells me this neighborhood could actually flood from the rain alone, but the river water coming in as well just makes it that much more imminent, that much more dangerous, and is the reason he plans to leave. As far as wind damage, the wind was gusty when we were in Bartow, not nearly tropical storm level gust at that point, but they are anticipating that to change in the next few hours. It's around 1 o'clock or so when they think things will start to deteriorate here in the Bartow area. In Lakeland, we checked in with the city not too long ago. Things are pretty good there, but they're kind of in the same boat as Bartow. Just kind of a wait-and-see game when it comes to wind damage, any trees down, things like that. But right now it's water. At least here in Bartow, the river is causing a problem here in this neighborhood, potentially other neighborhoods as well. And, you know, the river is a long one. It goes through other communities in our area, number in Hardee County. They, too, are having to contend with the Peace River behind you right now. We're live in Bartow. Chad Mill, ABC Action News.
All right, thank you so much. It's been so long. Chad.
Chad,
No, it's
yes.
been such a long morning
It's
already.
okay, dear.
Okay, let's check in with Paul LeGros now. He's been canvassing his way. Actually, we're going to go straight to Polk County because
Okay.
emergency management officials are holding a news conference.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. The
Again.
little technical issues with the Polk County presser, we'll get to that in just a moment.
Now we're going to go to Paul LeGros. He's been making his way across the Bay Area, checking out conditions all throughout Polk County.
Yeah, he's live for us this morning in Lakeland. Paul, you were in Clearwater last night. You know, the possibility again of hurricane force winds where you are now later today.
Yeah, as the track of the storm changes, so does our journey. Here we are in downtown Lakeland right now, guys, and behind me, just to give you a reference, this is right off Massachusetts Avenue. That is Lake Mirror in the background, Krieger Park. That's the famous lake, of course, for the swans that Queen Elizabeth donated to the city of Lakeland all those years ago. So the story here in Polk County, as you've been hearing, no doubt, is that the storm is now going to move its way up the spine of Florida, and it should be a Cat 1 hurricane by the time it hits Polk County, Lakeland area. And so the problem, two things. One, those Cat 1 hurricane force winds of gusts up to 85 miles an hour. Two, the rainfall over a sustained period of time here. So flooding is going to be an issue as it goes through Lakeland and then makes its way to Polk City in the Four Corners area. We're thinking about 18 inches, 20 up to 24 inches of rain possibly in this area. I want to go now to the presser, the news conference in Polk County right now. Emergency leaders giving us an update, so let's listen in.
I mean, the storm is, it's been raining here since last night. The storm is here. The center of the storm, which is the wind hazard, is almost here. It will be here later this morning and into the day. And then, the rain will continue tonight. And when that center of the storm comes through, that's when the most rain will fall. So that will happen this afternoon.
I want to make sure my information is correct. What I'm hearing is that about 2 o'clock it should be like making landfall and
Yeah, the exact timing, at this point, the hazards are going to be the same in Polk County. And the timing, is starting now and then, through this afternoon into the night, not getting any better until at least tomorrow afternoon is what everyone should plan for. And for flood, the entire county, we are extremely concerned the most around the Peace River basin, which includes, inside the city of Bartow, but also in the areas along Highway 60, Peace River Estates, which is just north of Highway 60, the Peace River Mobile Home Park, and that's along the east side of Bartow, all the way down south. The Peace River flows south from Bartow down to Fort Meade, so the east side of Bartow, or Fort Meade, and that's just the Peace River basin. Northwest Lakeland is historically flooding in the Itchipakasassa Creek area off of Walker Road, and Lake Lowry, which is near Haines City. All of those areas, again, if you live in that area, you should evaluate now. It could be flooding that you've never seen before, and it's going to come up fast. You should make other plans. You should plan to leave, have a plan, and be ready to go in a moment's notice if the conditions warrant. We just don't have any history with this a large amount of water coming this fast. And you always want to react on the side of caution. That's the wind speed, but that's still hurricane winds with gusts approaching 100 miles an hour. That's going to blow over trees. It's going to damage homes. There'll be debris on the roads, and then all the rain will cause flooding. So it will not be easy or safe to travel once that happens. Shelters will remain open as long as necessary. We've got 20 shelters open around the county. Response is surprisingly, in Irma at this point in 2017, our shelters were very full. We've still got plenty of space. We've got plenty of capacity in those shelters. When the winds reach, the hurricane force winds get here and it's not safe, and each shelter has to evaluate its own condition. As large as Polk County is, we can't just say they all close their doors, but if it's not safe to open doors and let people in, we have to err on the side of caution. Shelter managers make that decision to close the doors.
You said a lot more people went to shelters during Irma. Not so many now. Why is that the case? Are people not taking this seriously?
For whatever reason, in the past, each hurricane's different. Every disaster is different. So we plan 20 shelters. pet-friendly, special needs, and general population shelters. There's plenty of room. We're hopeful that that means people have made other arrangements, that they're not in their homes. Again, we do not have evacuation zones in Polk County. It's based off of low-lying areas that historically flood, and mobile homes and RVs. And we always promote that your disaster plan should have someone, a family member or someone from church, that they don't have to evacuate, go there. Our shelters should always be the last resort.
So your best advice about one?
Best advice, bottom line, is the storm is here, the flood threat. We don't want you to compare it to the past floods because we've never seen this. But if your area has flooded in the past, or especially in the last 3-4 weeks where we've had a large amount of rain in a short amount of time, if that water has come up, as isolated as your neighborhood or almost come up to your house, you should leave now. You should go to seek higher shelter because it could be that water could reach that level or be higher. No, our website, we're constantly updating the county's website, www.polk-county.net. All the information about our shelters and any additional flood information as we receive it from the National Weather Service, we're putting on our website. Okay, thank you.
All right, emergency leaders there in Polk County giving you the real-time live update there on what is the reality check right now. As you're waking up, the headline is, as we know, the path has shifted, but here in the city of Lakeland and Polk County and the surrounding areas, it is going to be a Cat 1 hurricane by the time it gets here as it moves up the state. So that means gusts of up to 85 miles an hour. The other part of the physics of this storm will be the rain. Too much, too fast. We're talking up to 24 inches in some places, perhaps more. Because this storm, Hurricane Ian, is moving at such a slow pace, right now around 10 miles an hour, it is going to crawl over this area. And so when you have that much wind for that long, that much rain for that long, as Greg D and Dennis Phillips and Shay Ryan have been telling us, you hide from the wind, run from the water. Unfortunately, depending on where you are in the chapter of this hurricane, you're going to have both. So hunker down, be safe. It goes without saying. The other part of this situation, guys, as we journeyed from Clearwater Beach to Lakeland this morning, a lot of people thought they were going to beat the storm by coming here because originally, as you know, the path was supposed to either hug our coast or be more of a Tampa Bay storm. So they actually, folks from Clearwater Beach, folks from the Tampa area, they came here to ride it out. And so now they find themselves in a situation of, is this where they want to be to hunker down for a Cat 1 hurricane? Obviously, I hate to characterize any kind of situation. You don't want to minimize a Cat 1. Obviously it's better than a Cat 4, but everyone's got to assess their situation, particularly in those areas that he was mentioning along the Peace River Basin where there's going to be some flooding. And if you're in a mobile home and that kind of structure, that's going to be an issue. We actually spoke to a couple just before you guys came to us from Australia. They were here on vacation. We'll show you what they had to say a little bit later, but for now I'll send it back to Dia and James with the update here in the city of Lakeland. Conditions, not completely terrible right now. Obviously it's going to get a lot worse, guys. So just everyone hang on.
Hang on is right.
Hang on and hang in there.
Hang on and hang in. And the same thing threatening Lakeland, also threatening Pinellas County. The strong winds, of course, the flooding, storm surge. That's where we want to go now. We have several crews in Pinellas County this morning.
Heather Lee has been showing us just how quickly the conditions there can turn from calm and peaceful to windy and rainy. Heather, what's it look like out there now?
Well, good morning, Dia. The rain is just slightly picking up, not much though. It's still more of a sprinkle than anything else. We're feeling the wind gusts as they come through, but it's not a steady wind. Again, it's just a gust of wind here and there. What I have seen out here is a lot of folks kind of waking up, deciding to come down towards the bay to take a look at this because it is fascinating to see how far out the water has been pushed. And we are seeing this in different parts of the bay, and we know from what Greg D told us that the wind shift is helping push some of the water out of the bay. And you're seeing that here. I think that coupled with the fact that we are also in a falling tide situation where we should be at low tide around 1 p.m. today, that is why you're seeing the water pushed out as far as it is. Now, I've been monitoring the tide, and I do believe that that tide is going to come in around 6:30-ish or so. And when that does happen, I do believe that the water is still going to come up, because also Greg did say that when that happens towards that time, we're going to see the wind shift as well. So I think those two combined is going to cause some of the water to come up. And again, this area here typically does get saturated in a normal storm, a normal rainstorm, summer storm. So I think during this hurricane, we're going to see this area of Old Bayshore get a little saturated. And then I think we might even see water potentially come up to the street. I have seen that before. In fact, I saw that during Hurricane Irma. And as you can see, there are a lot of trees lining this this roadway, and there's a lot of trees in Safety Harbor. Really, there's a lot of trees all over our area, a lot of old oak trees. And so with that saturated ground and the high winds, as Hurricane Ian starts to make its way into our area, we could see down trees. So that's something that we need to watch out for. That could be very dangerous. And of course, you never know when something like that's going to happen. So you just need to stay inside. You need to watch us. We'll keep you updated, don't worry. And again, we'll be out here. We might end up going a little bit more towards Palm Harbor, Ozona, Crystal Beach. Those are areas along the Intracoastal that tend to flood. We're going to probably head that direction a little bit. So we'll give you some updates throughout Pinellas County as the evening goes on. For now, we're going to send it back to you. Heather Lee, ABC Action News.
All right, thank you so much, Heather. This really is the safest way to get a look at what's going on all around the Bay Area. We've got all the images, crews spread out all around the Bay Area. Sarasota County, we've been telling you, is the first Bay Area county that is forecast to feel the impact of Hurricane Ian. 6,000 customers right now without power, but that's down from 13,000 earlier today. And it's going to get worse all throughout the day again.
Yes, it's a good number to report, good progress, but it's going to get worse before it gets better, as you mentioned. We have our Jada Williams. She's been in Sarasota since yesterday. And of course, a lot of things have changed with this storm. Maybe a mile either way, whether you actually get into the eye. And if you do, you're going to have 2 hours of calmer weather. But unfortunately, if you stay in the West Eye Wall, you're going to be in there for a long time. So again, we're going to continue to check back with Mike. I do want to mention quickly, though, we do want to take a look at our viewing area. Obviously, the fiercest of the storm is down south, but we are still looking at bands of rain and gusty winds across our area as well. And all of this, again, is moving to the southwest. You see the tornado warnings in the outer bands as expected. We will literally have dozens of them. But remember, the track expected to be about like this. Pretty much all, I won't say all of them, but most of them, most of those tornadoes will be on the east side. I mean, there's the line right there. That is the expected track of Ian. So we would anticipate the majority, the overwhelming majority of tornadoes that form will be on the east side of this line. On the west side, that is not where you typically see tornadoes. So that means most of the Bay Area, and of course that's not the case near the eye, because there's just a ton of spin near the eye, and anywhere along that eye wall itself, you can expect to see tornadoes develop. But for Pinellas, for Hillsborough, for Pasco, for Citrus, for Sumter, for Hernando, and most of Manatee as well, we're not expecting a lot of tornado warnings, if any at all. The winds in these areas to the west should pretty much be between 50 and 65 miles an hour, gusting right on through the afternoon, right on through the overnight, and into the first half of tomorrow. So we're going to have about an 18-hour stretch of tropical storm force winds. That's areas to the west of that line. To the east of the line, clearly it's going to be stronger. From Hardy and DeSoto County through Polk County, and unfortunately, the track is going to take this pretty close to Lake Wales. It will be a weaker system by then, hopefully. But at the end of the day, we're still talking winds of 70 to 85 miles an hour. And I will say this again, a couple of reminders. One, if you live in Polk County and you're expecting hurricane force winds, and we're going to be on, problem is, if I tell you, you know what, if you live wherever it is in Polk, expect 80-mile-an-hour winds in 15 minutes, it's too late for you to go to a shelter. And I'm talking about people in mobile homes. That's what I'm referring to.
anyone who lives in a mobile home, if you're in Polk County, I just strongly suggest you finding a way to a shelter, or at least someone you know that has a freestanding house, something with a little more power to it that can withstand winds of 80 to 85 miles an hour, because a mobile home is not one of those places. Flat out, it just isn't. So that being said, a lot of power outages. Jason was talking about that earlier on. With those power outages, you're going to lose the ability to watch. We are simulcasting right now on a lot of local radio stations, so you can check out our simulcast stream on various local radio stations. We'll have that graphic up for you coming up in a couple of minutes. I know Wendy and Jameson just said it, but remember, keep charging your phone. Keep charging your phone, because if you lose power, it is literally your only source of having information, of seeing where this storm is going, if you have any extreme weather coming your way. And those extreme wind warnings usually mean winds of about 100 miles an hour. Right now, that is in the purple area down to our south, but it is certainly possible, if not likely, that that track will bring some of those extreme winds across our southern and central counties over the next 12 hours. Wendy, Jameson?
And Dennis, I just want to point out something here, because when Dennis talks about the possibility of tornadoes, it's not to scare you, it's to prepare you and to make sure you have a plan in place if you have to go, if you haven't evacuated, you have to go to an interior part of your home.
Yeah, and Jameson, you know, I was talking about this earlier. I mean, think about this. Most of our tornadoes, the winds are maybe 75 to 80 miles an hour. Well, the winds with these storms, I'm looking at Jason over here showing some winds, they're 120 to 130 miles an hour. So to be honest, the hurricane winds are actually stronger than a tornadic wind. But yeah, absolutely. Of course, we're going to tell people there will be dozens of tornado warnings. That's what happens in a hurricane. But our goal is to tell you, give you a better idea where, and it will be along or east of the track of Ian.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. Heavier rains are moving further north across Florida, and there's now reaching into central Hillsborough County.
And our Robert Boyd joins us now live right now in Tampa. Robert, what are you seeing as we speak?
Well, Wendy and Jameson, right now I'm obviously standing inside, but right outside these glass doors, well, you can see the trees blowing. You can hear the wind howling. It is getting a lot more severe out there. Let's take a walk outside. Now, I'm not necessarily fighting this wind, but in the last few hours, it has gotten a lot stronger. Nothing compared to what Michael and Adam are seeing down south, but it's gotten stronger. I can tell you the rain has stayed about the same, though. It's coming down. It's pretty steady, but it's by no means a downpour. The rain's gotten a little bit rougher, but it's the wind that I've noticed. I've been up in this same location for about 4 hours now. The wind's got a lot more gusty. You take a look, you can see the trees blowing. You can see the stop signs, street signs blowing around a little bit more. And I got to tell you this, though, what worries me is I feel I've seen more cars venturing out on the road, more residents maybe feeling that it's not going to be affecting them, that they can go out and drive. Like you see this car going down the road right now. Still, as all our meteorologists have said, as Dennis has said repeatedly, we are by no means out of the woods. Stay home. Don't go on the roadways, because even though we might not see that surge right away, still flooding can happen. This is Tampa. Flooding can happen with irregular rain. So please be careful. Stay off the roads. And again, wind picking up right now. Definitely not, like I said, as bad as the south, but definitely picking up more and more. And for those Bucks fans out there, I got to mention, we're right across the street from Raymond James Stadium, and I've actually seen workers over there. Now, I'm not sure what they're doing, but I've seen people doing some stuff over there. The Bucks are, of course, supposed to play this Sunday. We've seen some people over there doing some things, maybe some last-minute preparations for later this afternoon. But the trees, you take a look behind me, they are blowing strong. The wind is picking up. And again, I'll be continuing to be out here throughout the afternoon and keep you up to date on what's happening right here in Tampa. Back to you, Wendy and Jameson.
All right, Robert, thank you. Yeah, the Bucks are supposed to play on Sunday.
Yeah.
They're practicing all week in Miami.
Yeah.
But we'll see if that's actually. If they actually play here, we'll see. I mean, you never know. Right now, hopefully in Hillsborough County, things are going to be okay. But we turn now to Polk County, and the Polk County Emergency Management is making a final plea to residents in flood-prone areas to evacuate right now.
ABC Action News reporter Rebecca Petit joins us live right now in Lakeland. Rebecca?
The rain has not let up here in Lakeland, and it's accompanied by gusts of wind. You can see the stop sign behind me being shaken by the wind, the trees being shaken, and emergency management is warning residents living in low-lying areas to seek higher ground because it will only get worse. Rain has been nonstop in Lakeland since Tuesday night. Some neighborhoods are already seeing flooding with the ground being saturated. Emergency management officials tell me there's a potential for flash flooding when Hurricane Ian makes landfall. The National Weather Service is forecasting 12 to 18 inches of rain. Some isolated areas will get more than 24 inches of rain in the next 36 hours. Do not wait until Ian gets here. Emergency management says teams will not be able to rescue you during the storm. There are 20 shelters open throughout Polk County that have not reached capacity. So conditions will worsen throughout the afternoon into this evening. In Polk County, there is also a tornado watch that you have to remember. And so as conditions continue to change, I will keep you updated here in Polk County. Live in Lakeland, Rebecca Petit, ABC Action News.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. And we want to go back to Pinellas County now. We have several crews out there.
Yeah, our Heather Lee is live in Oldsmar. Heather, the last time I saw you, you were handling some pretty strong outer bands there. How's the wind now?
Yeah, so they continue to come by. We have moved from Ozona, like you said, to Oldsmar, which is a little bit a ways from where we just were. We're now back at the bay. We wanted to get a second check on the bay after leaving Safety Harbor a few hours ago. The rain has picked up, the wind has picked up, but it is, again, just these bands that are coming through. Sometimes it becomes calm again, and then you see it pick up once again. I find this very interesting, but you can see that there is a metal trash bin all the way out there in the bay. Not sure how that got there or if it was already there before, but now you can see it along with some crab traps and some other things. That is because, again, we're continuing to see that water being pushed out, and it's really anyone's guess on when that water is going to come back, although Dennis does believe that it'll likely come back maybe overnight tonight, that not before we see the tide rise again, but after maybe over the next time we see the high tide, that is maybe when we are going to see that water come back. Again, anyone's guess, but it has been a very interesting day out here. We've basically just been going throughout Pinellas County, checking out the conditions in different areas. We're going to be staying kind of in the Tarpon area, more so Palm Harbor, but it's near Tarpon Lake, and that's something that we haven't been able to check on yet, so we're thinking that may be where we head next. For now, we're live in Oldsmar. Heather Lee, ABC Action News.
All right, Heather, thank you. And we know the Orlando area now will also be feeling the effects of Ian at some point.
Yeah, and that's where we find our Katie LeGros, where many families evacuated to when the track was heading further north until it changed over the last 24 hours. How's it looking in downtown Orlando, Katie?
Yeah, you know, Wendy, we've actually been out here for about the last 45 minutes or so, and really up until about 3 minutes ago, I was going to tell you how sort of nice and dry it was at the moment, but of course you can see that has since changed. We're here in downtown Orlando, where if you take a look, you can see there are some people still out and about. The local officials here, local news, have all been encouraging people throughout the day that we've been listening in to basically be where you're supposed to be by 2 o'clock this afternoon. So clearly we're at that point, and still there are people out and about. The roads are still, pretty heavy with traffic around here because, of course, we are a few hours after what we get in Tampa, what Orlando will be getting. You know, we're looking at really late tonight, overnight hours as being sort of the thick of the storm starting to make its way over Central Florida. And that's really still, of course, the track. I was listening to Dennis earlier and I heard him say, the wind's not going to be that bad here in Orlando, and that's what the folks here, believe as well. I will say here at Lake Eola, one of the things that stands out is some of the concern is look at these beautiful live oak trees. I mean, there are so many trees around here in downtown Orlando, and I was talking to a friend of mine who lives nearby, and she said, listen, Katie, there's a big issue with this tree. Some of these trees are over 100 years old, and there's been a lot of rain in this area for some time now, just over the course of the last couple months, and so the ground's still very saturated. So the big concern here in Orlando is what kind of flooding from what could be potentially historic rainfall will head this way. I mean, we're talking about possibly 2 feet of rainfall when all is said and done. And so there's some real big concern that some of these beautiful trees that that line so many of the streets in downtown Orlando could basically come down. We know that the mayor here has actually opened up the public garages so people can park their cars in anticipation that there could possibly be some tree damage. But you know, that seems to be the big issue as Ian starts to make its way farther north. And again, the big time here in Orlando is that the overnight hours. I was talking to some people as they were making their way, sort of just making the last couple walks with the dog or are getting their exercise in around Lake Eola. And a lot of them are actually comparing Ian to sort of Charlie's track, how actually it's coming into it's expected to come into the city, to come into Central Florida at the same angle. And so I've heard Charlie a lot as people around this area are sort of preparing for Ian, to make its way. But I think overall the sentiment here is we're going to be careful. We're taking this seriously. We're going to get indoors, but we know that what we're dealing with here in Orlando is nothing near what, of course, we're going to be dealing with even in Tampa and, of course, our friends in Southwest Florida. So there really is a lot of concern, even up here in Orlando, for our friends in the southwest side of the state. So for now, that's the very latest from Orlando. We'll be here throughout the storm, and we'll bring you the latest updates back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you very much, Katie. Again, we are pretty much about to have landfall here. The landfall occurs not when the leading edge of the eye or the eye wall hits land. It's when the center of the eye crosses land, and that's right very, very soon around Port Charlotte. So if you take a closer look here, right there is where you're going to have your greatest surge. And boy, that is Fort Myers. And we have been getting so many reports of water. The Fort Myers beach, 6 foot underwater right now, so you do not see the beach. It is literally underneath water all the way up. And there's a live picture right now. And you can see the winds, although gusting, certainly gusting, but probably not as heavy as they are in other spots. This is Collier County right now, where I would say that's probably winds closer to about maybe 60 or 65 miles an hour. You're not going to get a lot of pictures around the eye or the eye wall because the cameras will not work. I mean, that's just the way the winds are now with 155 mile an hour winds. I mean, you're 1 mile an hour shy of Category 5 winds. So that's what's going on now. I want to go back and talk a little bit about how this is going to impact in terms of the track and tides for the rest of the area, because Heather touched on this a couple of minutes ago. I really do not believe surge is an issue for the Bay Area this afternoon with that high tide, because the wind direction is still blowing offshore, all right? And with that being said, it's very difficult to have a surge if the winds are blowing in the opposite direction, right? So there is the center. We're going to get landfall very, very soon. And Mike Paluska right there on the west side of the eye wall. And as we were saying, I mean, this is moving in this general direction. So in a few spots there from Venice and just to the west of Port Charlotte, they won't make it into the eye. They'll stay in the western eye wall the entire time, which means they're going to have winds of about 100 to 110 miles an hour for about 2.5 hours, while the leading edge continues to move north toward Arcadia, toward Waimama, and eventually eastern Sarasota County and in through Polk County over the next 6 hours. Hurricane warnings obviously remain in effect. Let's not forget, folks in Pasco, folks in Citrus, folks in Hernando and Sumter, tropical storm warnings, winds of about 50 to 60 miles an hour for the next 18 hours once the winds really start to kick in as the storm moves off to the north. Pinellas County, winds of about 55 to 70 miles an hour for about a 12 to 18 hour stretch. We're already getting power outages. Still concerned about trees falling because the ground is going to be saturated, and it's much, much easier for trees to go down if the ground is so wet and soft as opposed to most of the time when it isn't. Manatee County, winds easily up to 90 and in maybe even 100 miles an hour in southern Manatee County. Sarasota, gusts of about 100 to 110 miles an hour. Same thing for Hardy County, but this is expected to become Category 1, weaken rather significantly. But I do have to say something, and Katie just mentioned this. Hurricane Charlie, same thing, similar track. Well, I don't know if you remember this. Hurricane Charlie did not weaken much at all as it moved across the state. And by the time it made Orlando, it still had winds of 130 miles an hour. So I bring that up because even though the Hurricane Center is forecasting very quick decrease in intensity as it moves across the state, that falls under the category I will believe it when I see it. The models have done a pretty pathetic job outside of the Euro. The Euro nailed this storm, but most of the other models kept this out in the Gulf and just really did not do a very good job at all. So, and what can happen, and I just throw this out here, one of the reasons we believe that Charlie did not weaken is because the ground back in 04 was so saturated that we believe that it did not necessarily dry it out like it often can. I mean, that's one of the theories. We have had a lot of rain over the last couple of weeks. Now, granted, it also went to a little bit farther south track, but at the end of the day, we hope for the development. We hope that the system will weaken, and the Hurricane Center says it will do just that. This is the latest update, all right? Expected to be a Category 3 hurricane by 8 o'clock tonight as it moves into Hardee County.
Okay.
And then by tomorrow morning, we expect it to be a tropical storm with winds of 70 miles an hour as it approaches Orlando. So that's a pretty significant drop, literally from 155 to 70. But that's what it's supposed to do when it goes over land. Let's keep our fingers crossed that that's exactly what is going to happen. Tides. Want to talk about this because there's been so much talk justifiably about storm surge. Because a couple of days ago, this track, albeit it was going to be weaker, this track was coming directly into our area with kind of a worst case scenario for surge. We have an offshore flow. In other words, the winds are blowing away, and it will be that way until the center of this storm passes our east to west latitude. And talking about Tampa, that's going to be tonight, well past the next high tide. All right? So at this point in time, this next high tide is probably not an issue for us. Tomorrow morning's high tide, about 4:30, that's the one that I think we are going to see more water coming in. And of course, it would have to happen at night. Seems like that's always the way it plays out. So I'm warning folks, if you're watching, yes, there's going to be some flooding. There is with all the rain. But the surge, the problem with surge is not only does that onshore flow push water into the bay, it also keeps water from coming out. So when you get all this rain falling, heavy rain, it has no place to go. So then that backs up and causes you to have inland flooding. So my concern from mid-overnight hours, 3 a.m.-ish, until maybe 8 or 9 o'clock-ish tomorrow morning before we get closer to low tide. But we're still going to have that onshore flow developing for probably about 12 hours. So again, tonight's high tide, 5:30. I'm not as concerned about the one tomorrow overnight. But remember, by then, that storm is almost to Orlando. So it's not going to be as strong. It will have a reach. But I don't believe surge is going to be quite as pronounced as the forecast is right now. Maybe there will be a few spots that are going to see that. But I think overall, it might be closer to kind of an Eta. Not in the same spot, by the way. And we certainly would never minimize Eta because that came out of nowhere and was bringing water in some spots that had never seen it before. So we'll continue to track. I'll be honest. Tracking surge is one of the most difficult things to do because every little wind shift and every little turn here and there can make a little inlet or a little small area flood, and just a half a mile around, not, because the wind's out of another direction. We'll keep our eyes on that, and of course we'll be going back to a lot of our reporters out in the field as things really start to come to a head over the next 6 to 12 hours. Now we're going to go over to Jason in the Weather Center for, again, another closer look at the radar. Jason?
Yeah, so the storm continuing to move to the north. What this is doing is bringing those tropical storm force winds now north of the I-4 corridor, and the hurricane force winds now across most of Sarasota County. Those gusts have easily been over 70 miles per hour from Sarasota all the way south, of course, to Venice and Nokomis. And, of course, these locations from Venice south are now in the eye wall. So we know we're going to get those 100-mile-per-hour gusts over the next couple of hours as this eye wall continues to move through. Also watching our easternmost zones. We've got another tornado warning. It looks just to the west, southwest of Melbourne. There's a possibility for our inland spots east of the center. So we're not expecting to see much in the way of a widespread tornado risk here along the coast as the center continues to move to the east-northeast, mainly talking, of course, Manatee County north up through the Nature Coast. So zooming in on a couple locations, we'll start here, of course, where the eye is now expected to make landfall at any point. Of course, landfall is when the center of the eye is over top of land. This will likely be Captiva Island. We're looking at 126-mile-per-hour wind gusts. That's the last report we got from Captiva. By that point, the anemometer may have been blown away. So we don't know if those winds are going to be up to that 155-mile-per-hour mark that the National Hurricane Center is saying we're seeing the sustained winds at. Currently, they just flew the hurricane hunters in it. They're still looking at winds around that, and the pressure is around 934 to 935 millibars, so no weakening is happening, but we're not seeing this continue to intensify rapidly like it did this morning. However, when you're borderline Cat 4, Cat 5, you got a 16-foot surge possible, and of course there's 150-mile-per-hour winds. The damage is going to be all the same. Also looking at this slowly inching to the north again. It looks like from Boca Grande, Little Gasparilla Island. I have some friends that have a house down there. Hope it'll be okay with this. But as we see it now, the strongest part of the eye wall, which again, the northern eye wall, is going to be in Venice within minutes. We've already got the extremely heavy rain. We had Michael Paluska out there reporting as he was on air. We saw those gusts really picking up within seconds. And we're going to zoom in a little bit closer here for those of you in Inglewood, Manasota Key, Northport. These are the locations right now beneath this red color on the map that are not only seeing blinding rains, but this is where we're looking at those winds exceeding 100 miles per hour. We had a 109-mile-per-hour gust in Charlotte County over toward Cape Coral. This is what's wrapping around the eye and heading west toward Inglewood and then up to Venice. Nokomis as well. We're looking at this very heavy rain over top of you all as well. Casey Key up through Siesta Key and Sarasota. As each of these bands come through, when you see the yellow and red colors shifting from southwest to northeast, this is not the eye wall itself, but you are in the hurricane force winds now. As we know, they extend 40 miles outside of the eye, and with the eye approaching the Northport area over to Inglewood, we know that we're within that 40 miles now here in Sarasota County. So sustained hurricane force winds are likely. We could see gusts even here approaching 85 to 90 miles per hour. And we are seeing those power outage numbers just accelerate now. Over 500,000 people without power, it looks like, here in the state of Florida. Most of them, of course, where the eye is coming through right now, but we're seeing those numbers tick up as well north of the eye. A little bit further north, we're talking about Manatee County. We're looking at the flood potential really picking up over the next few hours here as rain totals have exceeded 5 to 6 inches of rain. We're going to add another 5 to 6 inches of rain on top of these numbers as the eye is so slow moving. Charlie was moving so fast when it crossed the state, and that's why within about 2 hours it was already up in Orlando. This one's moving not even half of the speed of what Charlie was. So this is going to be a prolonged period of these winds, sustained at hurricane force gusts, and we are sustained at hurricane force with gusts over that, and we're going to continue to see this rain just piling up here. And like Dennis said, as the surge is trying to come in later today, all these tributaries, creeks, rivers, they're adding all the rain into them and trying to get them out to the Gulf to lower the flood potential inland. But as the surge is coming inland, it all butts together, and we see flooding where the river is trying to dump out into the bay or into the Gulf. So that's what's setting up for us here over the next few hours. In Tampa, we've had gusts to 60 miles per hour. Hillsborough County reporting power outages that are becoming a little more widespread now. About 10% of the county reporting some power outages. And also in Pinellas County, same deal here. We're getting widespread reports of those 60-plus mile-per-hour wind gusts, especially in downtown at Wooded Airport. We've had gusts exceeding 64 miles per hour. And in our summer thunderstorms that do enough damage alone, those gusts are 60 to 70 miles per hour. So take those winds we typically see in our normal summer rains. And that's consistently happening for the next 10 hours or so here. And that's why those power outage numbers are going to continue to climb. Going a little further to the east across the Salmon, or the Howard Franklin, I should say, and getting over. This is where Tampa is, and we're looking at those 58, 59 mile per hour gusts that have been frequent here. And notice while we've got a little bit of lull in the rain now, the heaviest is to our south in Manatee County. That's where the hurricane force winds are starting, and that continues to nudge north as well. Tornado potential in Polk County. I don't see it moving much farther west, though, than Polk County. Wauchula to Arcadia, the hurricane force winds closing in on you all as well, because again, 40 miles outside of the eye shows that the winds are starting to pick up significantly now in southern Manatee, eastern Sarasota, western Hardee, and western DeSoto counties as well. So 17 west is the worst right now. East over to 27 in Highlands County, not much rain, but we're seeing those gusts picking up here as the center comes inland in about 6 hours or so. Your weather is really going to start to go downhill there. This is where we're watching for rotation. You see these red colors showing up? This is where we're getting a little bit of spin. Thankfully, nothing as far as tornado development at this time, but in Polk County, watching the radar very closely for you all. Gusts here picking up to that 40 to 50 mile per hour mark as well. Same deal. Each one of these red bands that goes past your house is going to have the potential to produce those tropical storm force gusts.
Não é nosso,
sim. A lot of talk
eu falei.
about you all. That's a good thing in this instance because the worst is certainly to your south.
Tem esse que a gente tinha dois. Esse que a gente vendeu e o nosso.
Because of the offshore winds and the negative surge that Dennis was talking about, with surge levels actually 4 feet below what they are normally. We're expecting 4 to 6 feet above that once we get the center to move to the east and some of that onshore wind make a return. But at least right now, just some light rain for you all. Not looking at any kind of a tropical storm for sustained wind, but we could see some of those gusts over 40 miles per hour for you all. This will pick up for you as well tonight as the center gets a little bit closer to you. It'll be well to your east, closer to Orlando as we go to midnight tonight. But you could start to see some of those tropical storm force gusts here ahead. So timing it out for you hour by hour between 3 and 5 o'clock. The center, the worst of the weather, it is going to continue to move through Sarasota, Hardee, DeSoto counties, southern Manatee County, and that's also when we could see those hurricane force gusts.
Essas porra fica jogando água o dia inteiro lá.
St. Petersburg as well, also over toward Brandon, Lakeland. Still looking at tropical storm force gusts by that point, but as we go from 5:30 to 8, the center closing in Polk County, and we will still likely see this at a Category 2 hurricane by 8 o'clock, which of course means gusts over hurricane force. This is where we also could see significant wind moving into the Wauchula and Arcadia areas. Unfortunately, the same spots that got hit really hard by not only Charlie, but also, of course, by Irma 5 years ago as it came up here and then made that left turn. It just really, along the 17 corridor, we were without power for 2.5 to 3 weeks. We could see something similar to that again with this extreme wind setting up at the center, moving inland here over the next 3 to 5 hour period. By 11 o'clock tonight, conditions improve at the coast. We'll still see those tropical storm force gusts, but the hurricane force gusts are now inland, and the storm continues to weaken, but it still could be a Category 1 hurricane as it moves through Polk County, getting into Okeechobee, Osceola counties, and Orange County as it slides to the north and east. Finally, by 2 to 6 a.m. tomorrow, the center moves far enough away that we're going to look at some gusty breezes behind this. That's when the onshore wind starts, and it may coincide with a little bit of high tide action as well. So that's what we're going to be looking at for our surge potential to really pick up here from Tampa Bay north. But like Dennis said, based on the angle that this storm is moving, we may luck out and keep that surge with the onshore wind overnight into tomorrow morning on the lower side instead of the higher side of what the range the National Hurricane Center has given. And then by 10 o'clock, we're pretty much done with this tomorrow morning. Conditions significantly improving by that point, but with 10 inches of rain on the ground, we could start to see some localized flooding with rivers on the rise as we go into the next couple of days. This will be something, guys, we're going to watch pretty closely as we head into the weekend. Jameson, Wendy?
All right, Jason, thank you. We want to take a look at some video right now. This is from Fort Myers. Look at that.
Caralho!
Incredibly high winds
Olha isso.
and flooding there. And by the way, this is actually where our sister station is.
Vem.
And they had to
Fort
evacuate
Myers.
from their building because the conditions were deteriorating so quickly.
É?
And you can see
Os caras tiveram que evacuar esse prédio que eles estão. Não, também não. Tô falando caralho de puta merda.
It is not good. Dennis, that really looks bad.
No.
Yeah, Wendy, and I just got a report, and you're talking about Fort Myers. So we're hearing that a home that was 11 feet above sea level has 3 feet of water in it. So that means there's at least a 14-foot surge coming into the Fort Myers area, and it does appear
14 pés de inundação.
this surge is going to end up being in the Fort Myers area.
And that's what you've been concerned about this whole
14
time.
pés.
Whatever this storm surge is going to be, this is going to be the problem. So,
3 metros a água já
East of
subiu.
where the eye crosses. I mean, that's what it is. Wherever the eye crosses, north and east of that is where the bulk of that surge is, and that's exactly what's happened.
And Dennis, we have to reiterate, a lot of those folks in Fort Myers weren't prepared, right? Because they had 24 hours notice that they were going to get hit.
Yeah,
this
so
storm
right.
was going well north of them.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, and it's so reminiscent of Charlie. We've been saying this over and over again. But yeah, when you have a storm that is expected to go north, I mean, 24 hours earlier, the track was right over northern Pinellas County. And now, granted, I would have to say that folks in the Punta Gorda area and the Fort Myers area would probably have gone through this before with Charlie, because the exact same thing happened with even less time for them to get through it. So, you know, you can't look back and say, why didn't you do this? But certainly this has happened in the past. You would think anybody who's lived here since Charlie would know. You simply cannot know for sure with a hurricane coming in from the Gulf to Florida, from the south especially. It just seems to happen more often than not. So, I mean, this is, again, a look at it.
This is where the traffic,
is really making landfall as we speak. By definition, and again, I know a lot of folks right now are listening on the radio. If you've lost power, if you're listening on the radio, you can download our app. You can go on your phone and keep charging your phone, although now if you've lost power, maybe you have one of those little backups. But if you go to abcactionnews.com, /apps, APPS, abcactionnews.com/APPS, and you can download on your phone the app, which allows you to see everything. And our weather team will do our best to use descriptive words to describe where everything is, but obviously for you at home, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to see where these storms are and where the heaviest weather is. And right now, it is clearly moving in to areas around Venice, over to Port Charlotte, and the motion is still to the northeast, which is eventually going to take it into the rest of Sarasota County. You can see the spin right there. See those little spins? You're always going to get little spinners, a couple of them right there in the northern eye wall, which is very, very common, which means probably additional tornadoes and tornado warnings are going to be issued. But again, I just wanted to let you know that sea level is 11 feet in this one home. There's 3 feet of water in the home. The folks actually had to go across the street to an even higher home. So it looks like we've had at least a 14-foot surge in the Fort Myers area, which is textbook. There's the center. Just to the north and east of the center is where the worst of this surge will be. That's where the push is. And I'll say it again for folks watching in our area. If you are north of the center, your winds are blowing offshore. They're blowing in the other direction. You are not going to surge until the center of the storm passes your east-west line, wherever you live. And if you're on the water and you're worried about a surge, obviously what happens is as this moves north, and it doesn't just immediately flip a switch and all of a sudden the winds go offshore, right? This is a slow process which eventually turns the winds around and brings the water back in. And we've got some video from Sanibel Island where they have been already had winds reported of 120 miles an hour. And it's clearly there's folks there in a hotel trying to secure the doors and keeping either the wind or the water from coming in. And as Wendy said, I just think a lot of folks in this area probably were not as prepared for this as they could be, because just 24 hours earlier, it wasn't going to be anywhere near Fort Myers. And honestly, you could make the same argument for Polk County, because folks in Polk County were not expecting this storm. This hotel here is taking on water. So that's clearly why they're trying to do their best to seal the doors the best they can. But when you have what is at least a 14-foot surge, and that's obviously a hotel right there on the water, they just weren't expecting it, or they weren't equipped. I mean, it could be one or the other. I mean, maybe they were expecting it, but there are some places that aren't. I mean, we have not had a 14-foot surge on the west coast of Florida. Guys, can you ever, I'm talking to the rest of the weather team, do you ever remember a 14-foot surge on any storm outside of the Panhandle? Michael, yes, but I can't think ever.
No.
No, not on this side. So it might not be that they weren't ready. It might just be that they were ill-prepared to handle a 14-foot surge. So that's what's going on right now in Fort Myers, and we're going to continue to see reports like that, because as this eye comes ashore and it's moving north-northeast, that surge is going to continue right in the same area and probably right into Port Charlotte as well. So we continue to get more video coming in from also, again, the Fort Myers area and the Sanibel Island. Let's see, this one is from Fort Myers, I believe. So let's check out that video. And this is what's going to go on. For the next 12 hours, we are going to continue to see more video of storms, more areas of flooding, especially right along the area right there. Again, that's my point, just to the north and east of the center. And it isn't just water. I mean, we're talking about wind in excess of 120 miles an hour in a very small area. This still has winds of 155. So this was a worst case scenario in the sense that this was not a typical storm that was going to weaken as it gets closer. And very often in our area, that's exactly what happens. At least in history, that's the way it's been happening. But this got stronger all the way up until you see it. So this is from Fort Myers or Sanibel. This is from Sanibel Island. And obviously, so this is on the other side of that hotel. The folks were trying to keep the water out, and this is why. Now, I've actually seen a picture of this, and about 3 or 4 hours before, there was no water. That was a pool. The water had not come up. So this is a clear indicator of what surge can do. And that's not even talking about the winds. What, Greg? That's got to be, wow, look at the way that's pushing. That's got to be 100, 105, 110 miles an hour easily, don't you think?
And you know, Dennis, I think this is important to look at this, because I think a lot of people when they hear the word storm surge, they really cannot imagine this happening. I mean, you know, you spend so much time at the beach, the water always sits in one place. And to imagine the ocean, like you're seeing here, it literally turns into a river. There is a motion to that water. It's not a wave. It's just a constant movement of that water into the beach. I just saw a video on Instagram. There was a remote camera on Fort Myers Beach. It was placed at the 6-foot level and the water topped it. So I suspect the water topped all of Fort Myers Beach. It's probably underwater other than the buildings. I cannot even find anything out of Cape Coral, and I'm really concerned about that area specifically, Dennis, just because you think about all the canals that lead the Gulf into all those neighborhoods. Cape Coral, only the population is way up there towards 200,000 people. A lot of them have canals in their backyard, and that canal takes you back to the Gulf. So the Gulf is in your backyard when you've got a canal back there. And you're talking about a 12, 14, 15, 16-foot rise in that Gulf. That's going to cause some serious surge.
And Greg, it isn't just the rise in water, and a lot of people don't realize that you have a rise of 12, 14, 16 feet, as you say, then you have waves on top of that water rise. So imagine you go out in the Gulf and it's a choppy day. In fact, when there's hurricane warnings, a lot of times we'll get reports of 15 to 20-foot waves out in the Gulf. Well, when it gets closer to the coast, those waves won't be quite as high. But the end result is you've got a 10, 15-foot rise in water and then 15 feet of waves on top of that water at times. So all of a sudden, you're looking at, relatively speaking, a water rise that in some areas could see 25 or 30 feet. So that is why we are going to continue to see damage, and unfortunately, any homes on the water in this area, most of them are stilted. You know that. Most of them will be stilted to take into account the possibility of a water rise. But when you're building homes on the west coast of Florida, I'm not so sure a lot of people take into account a 15 or a 20-foot surge, or at the very least water coming that high, which is exactly why, as I mentioned, I had a message from a viewer saying 11-foot, a home 11 feet up still had 3 feet of water in it. So, I mean, Greg, that's something that we have to expect we're going to be seeing for a while. And you and I have been talking. I mean, that western eye wall still looks pretty fierce, and that's going right over where Mike Paluska has been.
There's still lightning in it, which tells me there's still convective action. The storm is still growing. There is still energy feeding into that eye wall. And you know, you think, Dennis, that water one goes up 15 feet. You get a 10-foot wave on top of that. It's the wave on top of the surge that then does the damage to the building or whatever it is. Yes, the stilts may keep the water below the home, but when you start crashing waves into it, then you really start causing some issues. We saw that at Mexico Beach with Michael. I mean, you're really talking about this storm being up there now on that list of Katrina.
Will be going up in areas like Fort Myers Beach, Cape Coral, and Fort Myers, because the
Okay. Filha da puta! É, ó. Do nada. Filha da puta. O quê? O que você quer que eu veja, meu amor? Se o nosso era o único à venda? Peraí. Pelo visto, acho que o nosso era o último, o único à venda. Era o único.
Coloca Stranger.
Ó, 5 conto.
Olha o chaveiro já quanto que tá. Olha o chaveiro quanto é que tá.
A chaveiro é o preço dele.
Era 49 na loja.
Ó, não tem, o nosso era o único à venda, ó. Por isso, devia ter aumentado.
Eu falei pra você fazer isso.
Puta.
Não tem problema. Já tava no... Só que a gente ganhou o dobro, né? A gente pagou o nosso.
Sim.
Ele pagou...
5 pau. 5 pau já tá o...
Esse valor pagou os dois que a gente comprou. O nosso e ele.
Onde eu fui parar? Bruxelas, filha da puta. Bom, vamos lá. Depois eu termino isso aqui. Bem que é o timing, né? Mas... Online. Isso aí, pessoal. Valeu. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe out